You know nothing's too low for me. But it doesn't matter what I do. I don't get to win. People have hurt you, haven't they? There's nothing for me on Etheria.
One of the things I love about Netflix's She-Ra is that its villains are just as compelling as the heroes. The wide range of characters in the Horde all have different personalities and motivations, and the show goes to great lengths to humanize them. We're shown that sometimes people don't know that they're on the wrong side, or that they might have other intentions, or that it's all they know. Even those who have committed terrible acts can still be understood. Which brings us to She-Ra's second main character and central antagonist, Catra. Catra is by far the most interesting character in the entire show, and one of the most complex villains in animation history. Her life has been ruled by abuse and heartbreak, and she embraces violence and conquest in her attempts to assert control and create an identity for herself. As viewers, we watch her become increasingly self-destructive, from lashing out at her friends to causing near planet-wide destruction. It's clear that she is deeply troubled, but she can't see past her emotional trauma. All she knows is how to be cruel and calculating, and she refused to move on past her grudges. Yet, we sympathize with her because we want her to get better, to realize the fault of her actions, and to come to terms with her feelings about herself. In this video, I'll be analyzing Catra's journey throughout Season 1 as she struggles to forge her own identity.
So many memories here, most of them bad.
Catra's early life is entirely defined by her relationship with Adora. Like many children of the Horde, Catra was an orphan taken in by Shadow Weaver. Catra and Adora formed a close friendship and promised to look out for each other.
It doesn't matter what they do to us, you know? You look out for me, and I look out for you. Nothing really bad can happen as long as we have each other.
However, Shadow Weaver saw Catra as a disobedient nuisance and inflicted much harsher punishment on her whenever the two disobeyed. This abusive favoritism continued throughout Catra's life, as Shadow Weaver routinely made Catra feel that she was worthless and merely a distraction for Adora.
You have never been anything more than a nuisance to me. I've kept you around this long because Adora was fond of you, but if you ever do anything to jeopardize her future, I will dispose of you myself. Do you understand?
In turn, Catra grew more rebellious, disobeying Shadow Weaver often, and subsequently clinging to Adora as her protector. Catra's self-worth became entwined with being Adora's best friend, to the point that she even slept at the foot of Adora's bed, rather than sleeping on her own. Even at an early age, Catra developed deep insecurities about Adora leaving her. Adora was stronger, smarter, and more sociable, while Catra struggled to keep up. She developed a deep-rooted insecurity complex, as she only confided in Adora, but suffered in her best friend's shadow. Catra put on an apathetic attitude, desperately trying to hide her true feelings of inadequacy. Despite all of this, Catra planned to wait it out until she and Adora had reached Horde High Command. She was prepared to endure the abuse on the promise that Adora and she would stick together forever.
She left us! She left me!
It would be no exaggeration to say that Adora's defection broke Catra. She was absolutely devastated that her only friend had abandoned her. Without Adora, Catra felt completely vulnerable, with no one to comfort her. This was the one person she had trusted her entire life, and now she was all alone. Overwhelmed by her anger and heartbreak, Catra simply endured Shadow Weaver's punishment, as she insisted that Catra be the one to bring Adora back to the Horde. Catra still refused to tell Shadow Weaver about Adora's transformation into She-Ra, as she still wanted to protect Adora from Shadow Weaver's fury. When the sorceress found out about Adora's betrayal, she chastised Catra further. Catra was punished for Adora's actions, with no one to console her. However, at her emotional low point, Catra had a stroke of luck. Hordak promoted her to Force Captain in Adora's place, despite Shadow Weaver's grievances. It's at this point where Catra saw a path to power, and began to see her own potential in the absence of Adora. She could prove herself by defeating the rebellion.
This is what you left me for? Dress-up games and a light show?
At the encounter at Selenius, we see Catra go through several different tactics to try to convince Adora to come back.
What's your plan? Insult me until I decide to rejoin the Horde?
I don't think Shadow Weaver is planning to give you much of a choice, but yeah.
Interestingly, Catra bullied and belittled Adora in the same manner as Shadow Weaver had done towards her. She repeated the same pattern as her abuser, because she knew the damaging effects all too well.
When did you get so weak?
Adora being unfazed by the onslaught of insults only further frustrated Catra. When Adora refused, Catra devised a plan to bring Adora down by attacking her new friends. If she couldn't convince Adora to return, she would make her suffer instead. Catra then took out her anger on Bow and Glimmer at the Princess Prom. By distracting Adora, Catra had opened the way for the Horde to seize Bow, Glimmer, and the Sword of She-Ra. This was the start of Catra's plan for vengeance. If Adora wouldn't come back to her, then no one else could have her. The plan worked marvelously, and Catra reveled in Adora's anguish.
After everything I've done for you, it's still her you want?
In spite of Shadow Weaver taking credit for the success at the Princess Prom, Catra had found new confidence in her abilities. Catra had hoped that this success would prove herself to Shadow Weaver, and yet she received no such praise. When Adora turned herself in to save Glimmer, Shadow Weaver made it very clear that she would reset things back to the way they were, demoting Catra and putting Adora back on the pedestal. Catra realized that nothing she could do would ever sway the favoritism. After the two rebellion fighters escaped, Catra cornered them and returned the sword to Adora. At this point, it's easy to ask why Catra stayed with the Horde. She didn't care about conquest, and Shadow Weaver had shown her no appreciation or respect, so why did she stay? I believe that Catra had several of her own reasons. For one, as we see throughout the show, she had no identity of her own without the Horde, and defecting because Adora asked her to would only make her feel like she had no purpose besides being attached to Adora. As well, returning the sword was a compromise. While Catra was still deeply bitter about Adora leaving her, she also wanted to get back at Shadow Weaver. Becoming stronger and overthrowing Shadow Weaver had become her main goal, and keeping She-Ra active would vastly diminish Shadow Weaver's standing with Hordak. For Catra, staying with the Horde became a symbol of her own independence.
I am so much stronger than anyone ever thought.
In the episode The Promise, we see Catra's warped independence manifest itself. After Adora and Catra encountered each other in the First One's temple, Adora questioned why Catra had chosen her path. What Adora failed to understand is that it wasn't a question of morality for Catra. She didn't care about right and wrong because almost everyone in her life had considered her worthless. All she wanted to do was just to survive, but Adora had abandoned her. The offer had only rubbed salt in the wound. Catra bitterly reminded Adora that she had taken the punishment for her defection, and had to depend only on herself to become stronger.
Oh yeah? When you left, who do you think took the fall for you? Who was protecting me then?
This struggle is reflected in Catra's fight with the spider. In a single moment, when Adora failed to come to her rescue, Catra used her own strength and resourcefulness to fight back, gaining the upper hand, only for Adora to come in at the last second in the moment of glory. This only exasperated her feelings of inadequacy, that no matter what she did, she would never surpass Adora. After the two revisit an extremely painful memory of Shadow Weaver's abuse, Catra revealed that in a twisted way, she was glad that Adora had left, as she was free from being locked into second place.
Catra, just wait! Why do you think I gave the sword back to you in the Fright Zone? I didn't want you to come back, Adora!
Reminiscing over the now broken promise Adora made to her, Catra made up her mind. She convinced herself that Adora had wanted to keep her as a subservient, inferior friend.
The sad thing is, I've spent all this time hoping you'd come back to the Horde, when really you leaving was the best thing that ever happened to me. I am so much stronger than anyone ever thought. I wonder what I could have been if I'd gotten rid of you sooner.
Catra took immense satisfaction in being the one to leave Adora behind to die, reveling in the fact that Adora was at her mercy. Catra embraced her new strength, unshackled by the shadow of her former friend.
Super Pal Trio. Man, those were good times, huh?
During this time, Catra met her two new friends and teammates, the cinnamon roll Scorpia and the eccentric Entrapta. Scorpia was one of the very few people in Catra's life who showed genuine affection for her. However, as Catra had only relied on Adora for companionship and had grown up abused by Shadow Weaver, she immediately rejected Scorpia's overwhelming kindness.
Unfortunately, you're the only one I can trust around here.
Because we're best friends.
Stop being so you and help me think!
Catra viewed Scorpia's affection as a weakness, and often lashed out at her. In some ways, Scorpia's kindness reminded her too much of Adora, and thus provoked painful memories. Catra would continue to put her down as a way to prove her own superiority. Yet Scorpia remained friendly with her, and became Catra's loyal enforcer. When Catra encountered Entrapta in the Fright Zone, she was initially surprised by the Tech Princess's blunt behavior. Entrapta wasn't intimidated by Catra's interrogation, and remained eager to chat despite having worked for the rebellion.
I like that thing. Can I have it?
No! And stop! I'm interrogating you!
Well, okay then. What do you want to know?
Impressed by Entrapta's ingenuity and attitude, Catra offered her companionship, and more importantly, a chance to work with new technology. Catra saw in Entrapta an incredibly useful tool, one that could win her Hordak's favor and crush the rebellion. Catra felt a kindred connection with the two oddballs. All three of them had felt that they had been mistreated and unfairly judged by the princesses, and Catra knew exactly how to prey on that insecurity.
Some friends, they left you and they're not coming back. Isn't that just like Adora? She left me behind too, like I was nothing. Adora got her precious bow and glimmer back. All these princesses care about is people who are just like them. But you're not like them, are you?
With Scorpia as the muscle and Entrapta as the brains, Catra had acquired a loyal group of allies to further her own plans. While she would eventually drive both of these two away with her lust for power and unchecked anger, for now she was content with her new companions.
Yeah, well, congratulations. I'm plenty strong now. And I don't need you.
Throughout Season 1, we see Catra continually take the brunt of Shadow Weaver's abuse and insults. Shadow Weaver constantly made Catra feel insignificant and weak, even as she desperately tried to return Adora to the Fright Zone. Once Catra realized that nothing she did would impress her adoptive mother, she determined that the only way to prove her own strength was to get rid of the sorceress. Catra returned the sword to Adora to keep the rebellion alive, and eagerly watched Hordak lambaste Shadow Weaver. When Catra tried to offer her sympathy, she was harshly rejected.
You get used to it.
I will not get used to mediocrity like you, and I certainly don't need your pity.
Catra then sealed her victory when she told Hordak about the power of letting Entrapta hack the Black Garnet. She had not only proven her worth to Hordak, but had also directly taken away Shadow Weaver's source of power. Outraged, Shadow Weaver refused to part with the runestone and attacked the trio of Catra, Scorpia, and Entrapta. Instead of running, however, Catra finally fought back, having learned from all her years of practice, and struck her abuser down, proving her newfound strength over the one who caused her so much pain. Catra's relationship with Shadow Weaver is heartbreaking to watch, as she tries over and over again to impress her surrogate mother, only to be rejected and scorned every time. Yet she still persisted, desperately trying to prove her own worthiness. Catra wanted to be accepted, to be acknowledged for her own merit. Catra then vented this anger out on those around her, repeating the same cycle of abuse. This is the first of the many psychological scars Shadow Weaver had left on Catra, and it would not be the last.
Very well, Force Captain Catra.
In the Battle of Bright Moon, Catra saw the Horde's conquest as her ultimate method to get back at Adora for leaving her. Because Adora had left Catra for the rebellion and the side of good, Catra embraced the Horde to destroy everything that had caused Adora to defect. She taunted Adora throughout the fight, prodding at her psyche.
It won't be over until darkness covers Etheria forever. And it won't be over until I see the looks on your friends' faces when they find out that you failed. That you were too weak to save them.
Had it not been for the reinforcement of the other princesses, Catra would have swept the rebellion asunder and broken Adora. The disregard to which Catra tampered with Entrapta's experiments shows how Catra would easily cause wanton danger and destruction to settle her grudge. It didn't matter to her if it damaged the planet. All she cared about was settling the score. The Horde's destructive actions meant that she was free to be as reckless as she wanted, as destroying the princesses and the rebellion meant destroying Adora. Even though the Horde was defeated in the battle, Hordak was impressed by Catra's advancements and made her his new second-in-command. With new allies and a new promotion, Catra felt even more powerful than before, free from both Shadow Weaver and Adora. She had created a new identity for herself, as a warrior of the Horde, a strategic leader, and as She-Ra's nemesis. Catra's development in the first season draws many parallels with Adora's journey. They both become stronger by acquiring new allies, and they both escape the abusive clutches of Shadow Weaver. Both Catra and Adora struggle with newfound identities, but as where Adora accepts her role as a hero, Catra chooses the path of a villain. Adora's defection had left Catra without any purpose or goals, but her anger had filled her with a new ambition. Catra now had a new purpose. She would make it her mission to exact her vengeance on Adora for leaving her behind.
Thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and if you'd like to see me cover Catra's development over the rest of the show. Hope you guys stay safe and have a fantastic day.